Hey guys, thanks for joining me. Captain Kurt Pfister here, coming at you from Flight Junkies. We're down at our Florida Training Center here in our beautiful training field. And right now this video is going to be a video to help you people that have decided to go with triking. Triking has become extremely popular. It appeals to everybody because you don't have to put a motor on your back. Foot launching or triking, either one is an amazing form of flight. We offer unlimited free training in all 50 states, so please don't use this video. Don't be a numbnut and try to take somebody's video, including mine, and try to launch a powered paraglider on your own. You'd be an idiot to do that. So, especially since I train for free. Other people are charging $2,500 for training. They don't train in all 50 states, and they don't sometimes they have a time limit on it. We offer unlimited free training in all 50 states, so there's no price tag, there's no time limit, and we come to wherever you're at, so you can't say you didn't have an instructor. There's no excuse not for you to get good, solid training. You can watch a video, but to come out to a field and actually learn and have hands-on training while you're doing it is a whole nother thing, and I'm willing to do that if you'll take the time. Anybody that purchases equipment from us gets a VIP pass to unlimited training for life. Even your advanced classes, when you want to learn aerobatics, or you want to learn tandem, or you want to learn anything else, you come to us, you have a VIP pass. We'll not only train you for free, but let's say you have a family member, a brother, a couple brothers, or 10 brothers. It doesn't matter. If you bought one piece of equipment from us, we think everybody should have the availability of good training. And so I've been the top instructor in the United States for over almost two decades now, and I'm willing to spend the time with you if you'll stay with me as long as you need to get safe. Well, right now we're going to teach you how to set up for your trike. Triking is extremely popular. It enables you to launch easy without having to put that motor on your back. But believe it or not, there's a lot of different methods that instructors are teaching out there, and I've read some of their books, I've seen some of their videos, and I'm absolutely appalled to some of the stuff that I see these other instructors doing. Now, I've shared some of my triking techniques with a lot of instructors. Some of my own students have become instructors, but I want to show you a method that'll work extremely easy for you, and you'll have a successful launch, and you have a better chance of never rolling your trike. First of all, it doesn't matter which trike you have. Some of them work a little bit better than the others. We are exclusive dealers for the FlyPod, which has become the best-selling trike on the market. You can see our other videos that explain what this trike does that no other unit will do. You can see our other video that talks about our motors, and our motors have features that no other motor has, and there's a whole list of them, so be sure to check those videos out, as well as our pre-kiting videos and some of our scam warnings about some of the other nonsense that's going on out there. You're going to read a lot of things in books, you're going to see a lot of things in videos, but I can assure you that the way I come up with, I've been in powered paragliding for over 2 decades now, and instructing for almost 2 decades, and this morning, as of the making of this video, I launched my 900th student. I'm the only one with a perfect safety record, and I have techniques that I've developed that you know, I was one of the original instructors in the United States. There was only a handful of guys. I was one of them, and I did a lot of thinking into how things could be improved rather than just stick with ways that were brought into the sport. And I'm going to teach you right now how to have a beautiful, successful setup for your launch for your trike. And believe it or not, half of the battle is in the setup. Flying trikes should be flown in very low winds when you're a novice. If you can find a day when there's almost zero wind, that is the best time to have your learning curve. And I'll tell you why. When there's a breeze and you're a novice, first of all, as you throttle up and the wing comes off the ground, it can act like a sailboat and start dragging you backwards. Students aren't ready for this, and one of their first instincts is to quickly let off the throttle. And that's one of the worst things you could do, because the only thing that's keeping them from rolling backwards even faster is the thrust of that motor as they throttled up. So sometimes coming out with a little bit of a breeze, even 5 or 6 miles an hour, I think a student should pick days that have almost dead air until their skill level really increases. Now, you can take my advice or not, but you'll find out the hard way. And here's the reason why. First, not only will you start being dragged backwards, but then as a novice, the glider is going to come up extremely fast. And your wheels aren't rolling, and you're not rolling fast enough to get ahead of the glider. What happens then is the glider overshoots the pilot, and it collapses. At that point, if he stays on the throttle, he's going to roll that machine over. It'll go behind him, it'll reinflate, and sometimes it can pull him backwards, squeeze his cage into his propellers if he's got a knockoff brand type of trike. Some of them have very flimsy cages, and even if you have a good solid cage like on a Fresh Breeze with a double ring cage, when that wing overshoots you and collapses, you're still moving forward. When the wing finally goes up and has an opening impact, even the pressure is just amazing, because in that time that it took to it collapse, and then you have no drag now, you're picking up even more speed with the trike. It flips back, boom, grabs it hard, and then it squeezes the lines into the cage, and there's a lot of pressure in that. So anytime that you see your wing come into view, you shut that, if it's not good, shut that motor off, and nothing can happen. And so if you practice in lower winds, it won't come up quite as fast, and you have less of a chance of it overshooting you. I'm going to teach you how to fly a trike later, but for right now, I'm just teaching you setup. And one of the things I like to do is have a wing that comes up and it's already in place, already balanced from side to side, because if you get really picky with your setup, your wing will almost come up almost flawless perfect every time, to where you don't even have to back down the throttle, you won't have to abort, you can just stay on it, and you got a beautiful wing the minute it comes into sight. We teach our guys not to look at the field after they set up. What we want them to do is look up at the glider. We want them to stare up at that glider and look for it. It's behind them on the ground, they can't see it, there's nothing to look at out here. There's just grass. So looking out here is useless. What I want to know is, when that glider comes into my view, is it a good wing or a bad wing? Well, what's a bad wing? Well, if I see it off to one side, that's a bad wing. And why is it bad? Because if I just stay on my throttle, it's going to create lift. The problem is, if it's off to the one side, it's going to create lift in that direction. It doesn't know that it's not directly over my head. And so it's going to want to pull the cart and tip it over. Now the fly pod does something that the other carts don't do. Many of them do not have an articulated front end. There's a whole list of other things that the fly pod does that no other trike has. But the most impressive feature about the fly pod is the articulated nose right here that will self-steer. And again, that's in the other video to tell you how that'll self-correct. But if you don't have that, you're going to experience a lot of failure with your launches, because you have to concentrate on what your feet are doing. Well, if you can have a good setup and a perfect wing from the beginning, you don't have to do any fancy footwork to get under the wing. You won't have to do any fancy steering to get the wing centered overhead. There's two ways that this wing has to be centered. It has to be centered side to side, looking up at it. You need to have it centered. You need that middle cell right up there in the middle. And you also have to have it centered directionally. Okay, so if it turns this way and yaws this way, you need to be headed that way. If the wing is headed this way, you need to be headed this way. You need to stay under that wing in two different directions. Straight forward with the center cell, and the center cell can't be off center side to side. Side to side is corrected by a little bit of brake, little bit of left, little bit right. If I see my wing off there, I can just simply apply a little bit of brake, and that wing will come back overhead here. If it's leading off to that side, I can give it just a touch of brake, and you want to do tiny little corrections. Overcorrecting makes it correct too fast, and then it whips over to the other side, and you're kind of defeating the purpose. But the biggest thing is, you should never have to roll a trike, even if it's one of the kind that are very hard to steer, very hard to fly, having to concentrate, and they don't have that articulated front end like a fly pod. You still should never roll a trike. If you roll a trike, it's because you stayed on the throttle long enough to create enough lift to lift you off the ground. So you have a long grace period from the time you throttle up until the time it gets enough roll speed to lift you off the ground. You have that time to abort, or to slow down to where it doesn't have enough to lift you, and correct the wing, and keep on trying to correct it until you get it centered. Roll for a little bit more, determine that that's a good wing, and then roll on the throttle all the way. Once you know you have the wing is good, if you don't stay on the throttle, you will never roll your trike, regardless of the quality of your trike. Okay? Now, the other thing is, when you're flying this thing, again, stick in zero wind, because from this time you throttle up to this time, If you are on a day when there's zero wind, that's your distance. Let's say 100, 150 feet at the most, okay? Maybe, depending on what kind of motor somebody puts you into. When guys come to me, I always take them a step further in power, so they're never regretting it. So they get a good climb rate, they're off the ground sooner. But when you go out into the wind, again, your reaction time is shortened down to this, because here's where it's going to lift you off the ground. So your experience level, if your experience level is low, you don't want to shorten your roll time, because that roll time is critical for a newbie. You want that long roll. You want to be able to have enough time to stop it, to brake it, to stop it from overshooting. When that wing is coming up and I throttle up, I'm looking up for the wing. I don't look out here. I don't look for any of the wing. I didn't take off in a field full of sawhorses and hurdles and obstacles. I picked a field that's wide open. This field is huge. There's nothing out straight ahead of me. So I look up. I'm looking for my wing. I throttle up. I give it slow, steady, and all the way to full throttle. I want to get the wing up, and I want to get it through the prop blast. A lot of people throttle up too slow, and the wing hits the prop blast, and it kind of beats around and heads off in another direction. They also lay their wing out in a way that's not going to come up good. If we lay this wing out with three things in line, it will always come up perfect. And the same thing goes with foot launching. If you watch my forward launch video, it's going to tell you the same thing. There are 3 things that have to be in line, and you will have a perfect wing every time. That wing will jump up and it'll be flawless. You come out, and even though we say it's low wind, we grab a little dirt, we trickle it a little bit, and we see which way that wind is going. Okay? So we start setting our wing up first of all. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to yank my wing out of the bag, and I'm going to kind of get a beat on it. I'm going to do it just like I would if I was going flying right now, and I'll probably even take it up. There's a little bit of a breeze out here, but I want you to imagine that there is no breeze. So here's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to walk over to my wing. And if you put your wing away the way I show you in my other video about how to pack your wing, you'll never have a tangle in it. I have a braiding system, and this is the way I've been doing it. I was a national skydiver for over 20 years, and this is something I brought over from skydiving, and it's caught on quite a bit in the past 15, 20 years. And a lot of people are doing it, some aren't, and they're wondering why they're getting a lot of tangles when they're getting ready to fly. Other guys that'll pack it away this way will be in the air long before the people that don't. So we're just going to take our lines out. We're going to stretch out our lines. And what I like to do is grab the risers right by the ends. These are called connection points. I just like to grab it, and I like to walk it out a little bit. I can drag the wing a little bit. I'll grab a little bit of this dirt, and I can see that the wind is heading this direction. Okay, I tighten up my lines. If there's any twists in them, I can see that I have twists. I separate it into two parts. Again, if you pack it away the way I show you in my other video, you'll have 2 sets of lines. Now that doesn't mean there's not some flips in it, but it won't be tangled. Okay, so we get it tight like this. Next thing I do is I kind of separate these, pull them apart, and I leave myself a walkway right down the middle here. And I come in. And the reason I do this, and I lay these down very nicely on both sides of my feet, and the reason I do this is because I'm going to open my wing up so that I can have it in somewhat the shape of the way it's going to be flying. We're setting up for a launch, but from the very get-go, we start concentrating on where that slight breeze is. Now, you might come out there and you say, man, there's no wind at all. Well, that's a perfect time to fly, but believe it or not, trickle a little dirt or a little dust, or if you're a smoker, I don't encourage it, but light up a smoke and watch which way it goes, or light up a Bic lighter and watch which way the flame turns. It very rarely does it ever go straight up and absolutely zero wind. And believe it or not, even that little tiny bit of breeze, once you start moving into it, will magnify on your glider. And so many guys are wondering why they're having failed launches. It's because they're not utilizing that little bit of breeze. Any bit of help will help get this wing up. So once you start into it, even if you're a little bit sideways to it, once you start to magnify that breeze against your wing, it's going to go off to one side. If you head straight into the breeze, if the wind is coming from this direction and the pilot is there and the center of the wing is here, it can't help but want to come. If you have an imaginary access through the 3, that wing wants to come up. So right now I'm just going to open up my wing a little bit. And I'm just going to kind of lay it in the shape that it would be when it's laid out. As you can see, there's a little bit of wind here, but we want to imagine that there isn't any. And I just kind of open it up a little bit, blossom it out. We'll throw our bag out of the way here for a second. And I just kind of open it up, and it's a good time to just kind of check out your wing and look at it. Okay, so there's our glider. It's kind of laid out. I'll pull this one out a little bit here. Okay, there we go. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clear my A lines. I want to know that these lines are untangled. If you untangle your A's and you untangle your brakes, you'll have a wing that can fly. Even if there's some tangles in the other line, you'll still have a wing that is able to fly and land you. Rarely will you ever see a tangle in them. So what we're going to do is I grab the ends, and as I'm walking out a little bit, I kind of jiggle these just a little bit and put a little tension on the lines. And right away I'm seeing that, and this is one of my students' lines, that the last time he put it away, these lines are not correct. I can see that my A lines are not correct, so there's a twist there, and there's a twist there. And what we're going to do is check the A lines. Now, in using my method, I just discovered that had my student used this wing, the last time he put it away, it would be incorrect. So we'll grab the A's right here. Those are the ones on the top that go to the leading edge. Those are called your A lines. These are your B lines, your C lines, and your D lines. Some have only A, B, C, some have A, B, C, D, some have A, B, C, D, E. This one is a Power Atlas, and I love this wing. And then it's got real simple, easy to understand risers. There's not a lot of stuff going on here, so it's very easy to identify which lines are which. We have color coordinated lines, so it's easy to spot if there's a tangle. But we're going to grab the A's, and we're going to hold them in one hand. I like to hold them in my left hand, and I like to hold them above my head. And as you can see, there's no other lines on them. If there were some lines, let's say I pulled out of the bag and there was a line hanging on it like this green one, I could just take this and put a little tension on that, clear all the other lines out. Once I've established that these are free and clear, I'm then going to check my brake lines. You want to make sure, and this is critical, you want to make sure your brake lines, the last time you were flying, you didn't let it drop through one of the other lines and let it get tangled on there. And this is also in my pre-kiting video, talking about the very same thing I'm talking about right now. But we're wanting to imagine that there's no wind right now. Okay, so here I go. My A lines are clear. My brakes are clear. I still feel the wind directly at my back. And so now I know my wing is ready to fly, ready to connect up to my machine, and ready to be flown. So I'm going to pull these to the side a little bit, keeping the A's on the top. I'm going to walk down my center aisle. I'm going to go all the way up to the glider. I'm going to pull in like this, and I'm going to walk backwards until I get about right here. Now you say, this is where I'm going to roll my trike back in here and connect to it. And you notice how close I am to the unit at that point. I'm only about 5 feet behind it. And there's a purpose for doing that. And what we're going to do is we're going to use that drag back, and that's what I call it, the drag back. I'd use that drag back to fine tune my 3-point system. The wind, the pilot, and the center of the wing. I want to first bring my cart over, and I'm going to warm it up, get it nice and toasty, because you can't warm it up once you've connected up to it, because you'll blow the wing around. We want to know that our vehicle is going to go up the full throttle and take us up. Our aircraft's going to fire up all the way. We don't want it hesitating on takeoff. So I'm going to roll it over here. I'm going to aim my prop blast away from the wing so I don't blow it around, warm it up, and at that point, I'm going to connect up after it. Here I go. I like to do a nice long warm-up. That way, if there's anything that I missed during my pre-flight, I also have a pre-flight and maintenance video that you need to watch in another section. And that'll tell you how to go over what to look for, things to check, and but watch that video as well. But right now, we're going to start it up. We're going to check our throttle. Okay, I've already pre-flighted this and looked over it, so I know it's good. And here we go. Start it up. And do a nice long warm-up. Okay, the motor's running good. Everything sounds good. I got all the burbles out. I'm going to turn it around. And I'm just going to back it into my centered where I got this centered at. Here I go. And what I did when I laid my risers down is when I centered it up, I laid them on both sides of my feet, only about 6 inches out from my feet. That way I can still pull my cart back in here. I can still pull my risers to this point and reach on the ground. They're not on the wheels. They're not outside the wheels. And so here I go. Here's my carabiners. I'm going to take my risers with the A's on the top. Now keep in mind, when that wing comes up, it's going to come up like that. So my steering's going to be in the back. The A's are going to be going forward. So that's the way I want to connect up to my carabiner. There it is. I'm going to take the rest of this, the rest of my lines, and I have an A line, or I have a guide line that I just kind of droop my lines into right now. That'll hold that in place so they're not on the ground, and they just lift out of here. It's nothing more than a zip tie on the 2 cage parts, and I just rest them in there. Okay, I'm going to articulate my nose back. If you have a fly pod, you'll want to articulate that back. I'm going to connect up the other riser. There you go. Now I'm going to connect up my A-line assist. Many other units on the market do not have this feature. This is something that pulls my wing up for me. If you don't have this, you're going to have to manually do it with your thumbs, release them at the perfect time, have to judge when it is, but it's going to rob you of being able to use your steering until that wing is overhead. You have to stay on those A's so that it tips the wing so the wing will fly. These will automatically pull it on for you, and it'll automatically stop pulling at the precise time, so you can start giving it input at an early time as the wing is coming up. I'm going to connect those to the first the D-ring right here of the A-lines, and these have already been set. Your instructor will show you the proper setup for hooking those up. Okay, here we go with the next one. Okay, and right now we've got our wing set up, but now we want to fine tune it. And the wind is picking up here, so we're going to come back. We're going to cut the video here for a second, and we're going to come back in just a little bit and show you how to do the drag back to fine tune this to make sure that when we do fly it, that wing's going to come up already centered with very little fixing needed to be done. So we'll be back in just a moment. Okay, hi folks, we're back. We had to wait for that wind to drop down a little bit here. And so we had our system laid out here. And again, we're trying to get 3 things in line: the wind direction, the trike, and the center of the wing. That's just a part of the wing. So here's what we do. And the reason I started so close to the glider is because I'm going to drag it back now. And in dragging it back, what it's going to do is going to allow the wing to open up so it's not in a tube. It'll have a lot of nice flat belly on it so that as I do throttle up, the air is going to want to go in the open cells and inflate much easier. Now you're going to read all sorts of stuff in books. Leave it in a triangle, leave it in a point, leave it in an arrow. But the problem with those methods is the wing has to work twice as hard to get into the shape that I'm already going to lay my wing in, and I'll show you the trick to doing that. Okay, so here we are. We want to fine tune it now. We want to know where our wind is coming from. And if there's any kind of a breeze, okay, I can see a little bit of our dirt coming right towards the front axle, so I'm gonna move my nose a little bit this way. Okay, and now my 2 things are lined up now. My wind and my trike. It's facing directly, and I have that dirt hitting the front end. Now it's moving a little bit here, and there's a little bit of breeze today, but on a low wind day, again, even a little bit off if the wind is shifting directions, that means your wing is going to come up crooked. The whole object of setting it up like this is so you don't have to work hard. You don't run a risk of rolling it. The wing will come up and it'll already be centered. Other people, when they don't lay it out like this, they have to adjust with their feet. They're riding over this way. They're adjusting with their brakes. If you use my method of setting up your glider and fine-tune it the way I'm going to show you here, it should have almost a perfect wing. And what I'm going to do is, after I get in it and talk to you a little bit, I'm going to have my wife take the camera out in front of this, and you can see how the wing comes up from our setup. We'll see how it works. All right, here we go. So I'm going to do my drag back now, because I left my line slack and I started close to it, and I go to the very center cell. Okay, now you can't see this in the camera, but I'm a little bit off-centered. So what I'm going to do is, the cart is already lined up with the wind. We trickled a little grass, but my nose is just a little bit off. But since I'm starting so close with a little bit of slack, during the time that I'm dragging it back, I'm going to center it, okay? I'm going to drag back until I see 2 A-lines pop up. I'm going to grab on both sides of the center cell, and I need to go that way just a little bit. And here's what I'm going to pull it this way a little bit, and now I'm looking at the very center of my hub and the center of the trike, and I got my finger on both sides of the middle cell. And all I do is drag it back, keeping it centered like I'm looking down the barrel of a gun, and there's 2 A-lines that popped up. I then go to the next cell that's got a line on it, and I pull it until it stops my hand. I go to the next one, and I pull it until the A-line tightens up. And then the next one, and then the next one. And I'm tightening up all the A-lines. And you'll notice that as I'm doing this, what's happening is it's putting this beautiful arch in my glider just naturally. And what that's going to do is have it work less to get into the shape that it's already going to be in when it's flying. When I get to the very end here, I'm going to grab the tip, I'm going to pull that out a little bit, and I'm going to clean it up. I want to make sure that there are no lines over the back of my glider. Okay, so there's 1/2 of our wing, and you can notice that nice, beautiful curve in there. And now we're going to start with the other side. We pull until the A-line stop. Here's another A-line popping up. Another one, another one, another one. Here we go, all the way to the end, and you can see them all tightening up. And of course, when you look at that glider now, you'll notice that all the cells, no lines over the back. Now look at all these cells and look at that beautiful arch, folks. You see this? And what's going to happen now, we took the time to line 3 things up. The wind direction, the trike, the center of the wing. Now all of the lines, so it's centered from side to side this way, and all the lines are going to tighten up at the same time because we stretched them all the way out to their limit. By stretching them out to their limit, when I throttle up, all of the lines are going to want to start lifting the wing up. If I don't have this centered this way, let's say I don't do this method, what's going to happen is one of the lines could start tightening up first, and of course that side will start to fly first. If it starts to fly, it can flip. If it can flip and you stay on the throttle, you're going to flip the cart. You're going to roll it. But remember, anytime the wing isn't coming up good, you don't have to stay on the throttle. Choose to abort. You can get out of it and reset in about 5 minutes and be ready to go. So right now I'm going to have my wife go out in front of us, and we're going to see how good our setup did. But before we do that, we're going to get in. Let me give you a little bit more instruction. Now that we've dragged it back, what I like to do is comb out these lines, and I'll show you on the other side. I like to kind of tighten these lines up a little bit. Just put a little tension on them so that there's no loose lines here to get sucked into my propeller. You just want to, and you also look out into here for any sticks or any debris that may crunch your lines or hold them into a knot. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing on this side here right now. Here I go. I grab these right here, and I just kind of loosely pull them through my hands. Again, I'm looking for any debris or anything that looks like a knot. I see a little piece of something over here. I'll just come in here and get this little stick out of here. You know, this kind of stuff could just hold a couple lines together. But again, if you get up there and you see some lines crunched together and it's flying, don't panic. Remember, you know, it's still flying, it got you off the ground, it'll still land you. So don't panic if you get in the air and you realize maybe you got a line twisted, maybe you got some debris in it, because if it was enough to get you off the ground and you're flying, when you notice it, don't panic, just bring it around and land it, get the crud out of it. Okay, so now I'm almost ready to fly. My machine is warmed up. I'm going to get in this cockpit here, make sure that my wheel is articulated back. I'm going to put my seat belt on. I'm going to get my throttle in my hand. Now, before I started, I want to talk to you about what I'm going to do here, because my launch technique is very simple. I'm going to keep my hands just above the carabiners. I don't want to be pulling brakes and starting out with brakes on, because I need that glider to come up. So we're going to use quite a bit of throttle. We're going to take it to full throttle, but I'm going to keep my hands high, because I don't want my prop blast, I want the wing to be able to come up through that prop blast. So I keep my hands high. As the wing is coming up through my prop blast, I'm going to feel a tug on my brakes. That's a good indication that my wing is coming up. And all I'm doing is looking up for the glider. I am not looking out at my field. There's nothing to hit. I have a beautiful field ahead of me with no obstacles, so looking out here is actually a hindrance. I want to know what that wing is doing so I can quickly react, so it doesn't roll me, so I can choose to abort or choose to slow down, correct the wing, and then roll on once I get it stable. So I'm going to keep my hands high. Once the wing comes into view, I have a quick second to react and stop it from overshooting me, because I'm not rolling fast enough that I'm staying ahead of the wing. If the wing overshoots me and gets to 12 o'clock, it's going to want to collapse. At that point, if you ever see it collapse, kill the motor. Just shut it off, and no harm will come. Okay? So I'll get it up, I'll throttle up, I'll brake, my hands will drop down. If the wing still looks good, I'll take the launch. If it's something that needs fixing, I'll fix it. But remember, if you set it up with my way, with my method, instead of using what you see in books and other videos out there, it's nuts. They'll have you do all sorts of stuff, but if you set up this way, it's almost perfect every time it comes up with very little correction. So my wife's going to go out in front right now, and she's going to film it straight on so you can see how this glider comes up and watch the launch, okay? Here we go. Enjoy the video. Okay, here we go. Keeping my hands high, looking up for the glider. Here we go. There's my wind direction. Motor goes off. Start to get into the... Okay, as I'm coming to a... off to one side and turn off. And of course, as you saw, the wing came up absolutely flawless, which is the way it comes up only 99% of the time. You might get a little wind directional change, but if you do perfect launch, or at least you'll get a little correction needed to where you don't have to think a lot about your feet. If you have one of those units that doesn't have what the fly pod has, that has the self-correctiveness, then it can get a little bit hairy. So you really want to give yourself the best chance of having a perfect wing. If you use my way, I promise you, you're going to find this more effective than anything you'll read in anybody's books or videos. And again, come in anytime. We'll train you how to fly it. We won't charge you for training. There's no time limit. There's no price tag, and we train in all 50 states. I want to thank you for joining me. I hope this has been a helpful video to you. And if you have any other videos that you think should be made, give us a call. We're open for suggestions. Check out some of our other ones. And if there's something that you're kind of curious about, you know, shout us out, and we'll see if we can make a video about it to kind of help you out. But again, don't use these for training. Thanks for joining me. I'm Captain Kurt. Hope to see you in the air.